Hello and welcome back to another session of previous year's question paper analysis. Today we are tackling two important questions that often appear in university exams. The first question is, what is a multipolar world? Explain. And the second question, which appears in exam, elaborate on the various elements of power. These topics are crucial for understanding international politics and power dynamics. We'll break them down with simple explanations, examples, and exam-focused insights. Let's get started. So, what is a multipolar world? A multipolar world refers to an international system where multiple powerful nations influence global affairs rather than a single dominant power. This system is different from a unipolar or one superpower or bipolar, and that is called two superpowers world. For example, the Cold War, which occurred between 1947 and 1991, was a bipolar world with the USA and USSR as the dominant players. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the USA led a unipolar world. But today, we see the emergence of multiple power centers making the world multipolar. So what exactly led to a multipolar world? There are at least three factors responsible for the emergence of a multipolar world, and we can cite them accordingly. First one is rise of new powers, second, decline of American hegemony, and third, economic and strategic alliances. So what is meant by rise of new powers? New powers like China's economic growth and global investments, India's strategic role in global politics, Russia's military resurgence and alliances, and of course European Union's economic influence. So the rise of these new powers led to a multipolar world, and this is one of the factors. The second factor responsible for the emergence of a multipolar world is the decline of American hegemony. US economic crises like 2008, military failures in Iraq and Afghanistan, challenges from China, Russia, and regional powers, all these factors contributed to the decline of American hegemony, which in turn gave way for the rise of a multipolar world. Third factor which is responsible for the emergence of a multipolar world is economic and strategic alliances. For example, BRICS, that means Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, as an alternative to Western dominance. Another example is Belt and Road Initiative, for example by China, reshaping global trade routes. And last but not least, regional organizations like ASEAN, EU, and African Union gaining more power. So these three factors, namely a rise of new powers, decline of American hegemony, and economic and strategic alliances, gave way to a multipolar world. Now the question before us is that, is the world truly multipolar today? Some experts argue we are in a transition phase. The US still holds significant power, but emerging nations are challenging the old order. Economic power is distributed, military alliances are shifting, and technology is reshaping global dominance. Alright, so this is a brief explanation of a multipolar world with real world examples. And now if you get this question in exam, how are you going to structure your answers? So these are a few exam answer tips for you about multipolarity. First, you should begin by defining multipolarity, wherein you are supposed to mention multiple powerful nations, and then go on to explain historically. That means cite some historical examples. For example, Cold War, Unipolarity after 1991, and then explain the shift to multipolarity, which involved China, Russia, India, BRICS, EU. Alright, and then conclude with the current status by raising questions such as, are we truly multipolar or in transition? So that was related to the first question called, what is a multipolar world? And we need to provide explanations. So let's move on to the second segment of our today's session, and that involves the question of elaboration of the various elements of power. Alright, so what is power in international relations or global politics? Power is a nation's ability to influence others through economic, military, political, and cultural means. For example, the US influences global politics through military strength, economy, and media dominance. So what are the key elements of power? The key elements of power can be described in at least 5 ways. First, it includes military power, then economic power, and then political power, soft power, and last but not least, technological power. So let's deal with all these elements of power. Military power, for example, is strong armed forces. Strong armed forces equals strong global influences. If you have a strong armed force, then you will be able to exert influence globally. For example, US military dominance, where it has aircraft carriers, nuclear weapons. All this strength, showcases a global influence. Russia-Ukraine war 2022 shows how military strength affects global poverty. Now, for your exams, you are supposed to define military power, then give examples and explain its role in global influence. Moving on to the second key element of power, that is economic power. Now, what is economic power? It is nothing but the strength of national economies. To say it differently, nations with strong economies shape global policies. For example, China's global investments, Belt and Road Initiative, US dollar as the global reserve currency. So for exams, what are you supposed to do? For exams, you're supposed to mention GDP, trade policies, and economic alliances, for example, BRICS and WTO. So that was your second element called economic power in addition to military power. Now the third element is called political power. Nations influence others through diplomacy, international organizations, and alliances. And examples can be cited like United Nations Security Council. 5 permanent members hold significant power. India's role in G20 and UN peacekeeping. So for exams, how are you going to deal with this? First, discuss diplomacy, then alliances, and then global governance when you talk about political power. Now, when it comes to soft power, which is the fourth element, it is nothing but influence through culture, values, and media. And examples include Hollywood and K-pop influencing global youth, India's yoga and Bollywood creating soft power worldwide. For exams, you should explain soft power's role in shaping global perception. The next element is technological power. It is concerned with national power in innovation. So nations lead through innovation, then dominate globally. Or you can say nations leading in innovation dominate global influence. Examples, China and Russia in AI race. And then space dominance, NASA, ISRO, SpaceX. For exams, you should be able to mention AI, that means artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and space technology. Alright, so we have covered the second aspect, the second question, that is called elements of power, and we highlighted key elements of power, namely military power, economic power, political power, soft power, and technological power. So how are you going to shape your answer for the exams? There are a few tips for you regarding elements of power. First, define power, that is ability to influence. Then list key elements, which includes military, economic, political, soft, and technological power. And then give some global examples like US, China, India, UN, then AI race. And finally conclude with importance of balanced power. That is, a country must balance all elements for dominance. These topics are crucial for exams and for understanding global affairs. If you found this useful, drop a comment on which topic you would like me to break down next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exam-oriented content. See you in the next one.